building. Dangerous being a mic. So. Today, I'm Ryan Tabloff with Lacoon Mobile Security. So today, I know we a couple presentations before, advanced threats, emerging, targeted. So now what we're going to talk about today is all of those things, but with on the mobile devices. So we're going to really talk about the risk, talk a little bit about the mobility ecosystem, and we'll go into some demos. Lacoon, okay, we don't need to go into the marketing speak. We work with enterprises, and we protect the mobile device or the data on the mobile device. And we don't need to go through FUD. As we see here, the Gartner and all of the analysts have let us know that this is an issue and we should be talking about it. So what do we talk about though, right? So I think what we need to talk about is the risk. And when we think of the risk, Apple has done a good job with their App Store. So we think, sure, let's allow iOS devices. We should be all safe. And we should not allow Android. But let's talk a little bit about the iOS and the Android and what the real attacks are there, where the sort of the threats are, and then let's talk about the data and then how we should potentially try to solve this problem, and then see what it looks like. So here is a lot of words here, but on the iOS side, right? So we know that when we go to the App Store, those apps have been vetted. We're assuming there's not malware in those applications. However, there's several different ways to get an application on a device without going through the App Store. So, I'm sure most of you here know what an enterprise or developer certificate are. It allows people to develop applications. A developer certificate, you send that to Apple and then they vet your application. But that application, using the developer certificate, can still be installed on devices. Then you have an enterprise certificate. That enterprise certificate allows an organization to build an in-house application, push it out to the iOS devices without ever going to the App Store. So what we're finding is, with the enterprise and developer certificates, they're stolen. You can, whether it's fraud, whether it's just stealing it, whether it's a real organization getting the certificate and then trying to do something malicious with it. But these certificates, it's more than just a couple edge cases. We're seeing them continuously in the dark forums being sold and being used. So the application, sure, when we go to the App Store, but there's many different ways to get the application on the device. And we use different things to try to educate and train the end users. But really, at the end of the day, everyone is just trained to click on the link, especially with the mobile form factor. We don't even see the whole URL. We see tiny URL dot something. And we just assume, hey, that probably came from my IT group, so I'm going to click on it. So that's the application side. But the other component we have is we have the profile configuration to the iOS device. With the iOS device, with the profile configuration, it's really where the security, where the brains of what's happening on that device are. It's where our certificates are, it's where our email proxies sit, it's where the security of that device. When we go in, when you get your device, it has one stock profile. When you add MDM, you're going to add another profile. In most enterprises, they came with one. Most devices have 3 to 4 profiles. However, those are the profiles that should be on there. Each end user, on average, 7 profiles. And they have no idea where those profiles came from. Because we're trained with our behavior, every application now asks for calendar, contacts, GPS. So we just assume we're going to hit 3 times OK every time, or for the most part, we download an application. So a real quick example of this, of a malicious profile configuration, would be LinkedIn Intro. I think we're all familiar with LinkedIn. LinkedIn Intro is an application that LinkedIn sent out or developed, where basically anytime you receive an email, it would see that email address of the recipient or the sender, and it would say, hey, do they have a LinkedIn account? And if they do, you'd have a little icon and you could go right to their LinkedIn account. And if they didn't have a LinkedIn account, you then would send them an email and say, hey, join LinkedIn, it's this amazing thing, everyone's on it today. The issue was, how did LinkedIn know if whomever was sending you email, if they had a LinkedIn account or not? Well, what LinkedIn did is they put a profile configuration on the iOS device, and they rerouted all of that inbound traffic to that device through LinkedIn server. So in effect, LinkedIn became the inbound email proxy for these devices. So it's not a big deal maybe for an end user. I don't think my mom cares, but I think everyone in this room probably cares if their end users now, if all that inbound traffic is being rerouted through LinkedIn servers. All right, so that's one way where it's just very innocuous. It went through the Apple Store, but it turns out to be a malicious profile configuration and can be used to do harm. So that's one way. So we talked about that. And then, of course, we still have jailbreaking devices. And there's been many examples now that the latest and greatest iPhones and iOS operating systems are still able to be jailbroken. So those are, from a risk standpoint, those are the main threat vectors that we're seeing on the iOS devices today. And going to the device and kind of dovetailing off the last little conversation, if you think about that device, it is outside of the corporate firewall. It has pretty much all the same data that's going to be on your laptop, desktop, or your traditional endpoint. But now you're going to have all information that's not going to be on that traditional endpoint. You're going to have phone calls. You're going to have text messages. You're going to have a lot more, not just the data, but the information. And you have this device that's always connected. So of course it makes sense that that's where the attackers are going to go to, because it's where business is being conducted. It's where the data is residing, and it's where the data where most of the time we have no visibility to what's happening with that data. Okay, so that's a little bit on the iOS side. Let's briefly touch here on the Android side. So with Android, I think we understand. Hey, it's fragmented. There's many different flavors. There's Android L. There's 4.this. AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. Everyone has a different version of the operating system. We also have Google Play. And they use Bounce and they do a little bit of testing, but they want to keep everything open. So of course, there's mass malware, there's aggressive adware that's in the Android App Store. But I would argue that those types of malware, that aggressive malware, that aggressive adware, that really doesn't impact an enterprise that much. It impacts an end user. It impacts the end user. Maybe there's a malware that now is doing some SMS premium dialing. So now there's a couple extra dollars a month on their cell phone bill. In a BYOD environment, if they're paying a couple extra dollars because they clicked on a link or downloaded an app, that doesn't really matter to the enterprise. But it's when these applications can exfiltrate data off the device. That's now when the enterprise has to look and say, hey, what's happening with these applications? So in the Android, when people talk about malware, and 90% of the applications in the Android store are malware or mass, aggressive adware, that's more not necessarily around exfiltrating data. So think about where those studies are coming from. It's not really geared towards the enterprise. It's really geared towards the consumer when you hear those type of statistics. So you have third-party app stores. We have Amazon. We have different regions that now are spinning up other app stores, and it's very difficult now to detect because these are legitimate applications that can be, this is also for iOS, but especially for Android. And now we're seeing that preloaded Samsung and HTC and LG devices coming through carriers, AT&T and Verizon, are having malware in those applications that are pre-installed on them. And those types of malware are now what we call remote access Trojans, or these devices now are spy phones. Now those are the types of attacks that enterprises should be thinking about. When a device is a remote access Trojan, basically now it is able to exfiltrate data off that device. So that's where the Trojan, if we think of Trojans, that's really what spy phones are doing now, right? Something getting on the device, and it's going to sit there kind of like the traditional, this is like the new evolution of the advanced persistent threat. It's going to sit there, and now it's going to be able to exfiltrate data off that device. And we have rooting, of course, and then we have some, Heartbleed and some of these network-based attacks. So, and the same thing with Android. Obviously, it's data and it's information, just like on the iOS device. So that was, a quick overview on some of the threats and some of the difference, right? So Android, it is, a little more on the application side because the App Store is open. However, I think it'd be wise to really think about the risks also on the iOS. So a lot of organizations are saying, we'll allow iOS, we won't allow Android. We still should think about what those real risks are on the iOS devices. Before we go into a demo, let's just talk a little bit around builds here. Okay, so what we have really, if you think about the two blue dots in the middle there, that's your MDM. That's your secure containers. Okay, so that's your traditional, not necessarily security, but more mobility, static policy and management, almost an asset tag of the device. Maybe some remote wipe, some blacklisting and whitelisting, enforcing a PIN lock with the data leakage prevention, the secure containers, dual persona on the device. But that really doesn't, get to the cybersecurity threats. So we have the known, maybe, AV on an Android device, but really most of the attacks that we're seeing on the mobile side are these 0 days, these unknowns, these targeted attacks. And to be able to find these attacks, we can't use traditional methods. We can't use antivirus on a mobile device. We recently did a study. We took the 55 top antivirus vendors and created malware, and 11 of the 55 were able to find this malware. Then we did a little obfuscation. All we did was change the name of the malware to Adobe, and 3 of the 55 were able to find it. Then we did a couple other tweaks. A little obfuscation, only 1 of the top 55 Android AV solutions were able to find this malware that was literally created in less than 2 minutes. So so these known attacks, aggressive adware, mass malware, very, very low detection from AV. So really now you need to get to this, look at the behavior of the device, and look at the behavior of what's happening on the device at the applications, at the operating system and the device level, and at the network level, to really determine what's happening with the data on that device. And not to be Big Brother and say, hey, this person, their GPS, I'm tracking them. But really it's about, hey, maybe BYOD corporate devices, but either way, we have enterprise data on that device, and we need to make sure that we're protecting that data. So let's here go just a real brief here. So Lacoon Mobile Security, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to be able to use behavioral analysis to detect anything that's malicious and suspicious that's happening on that device. And really looking for those things that are going to be able to exfiltrate data off that device. Where, using a behavioral risk, right? Basically, we're able to not only detect what's happening, but we're able to also then spit up mitigation to prevent that data from being exfiltrated, whether it's on the device, leveraging an MDM, or through the network. And then it's enterprise ready, so we have a cool dashboard, and we make it easy to integrate to your MDM, and to your SIM, and things like that from a management standpoint. So here's a little workflow of what we do, but let's get into the demo here. So here we have just a Samsung Galaxy S3. It's not rooted. It's just running normal. It's running on the latest version of Android. It's running the latest version of the good secure container, and this also is running Lacoon's Mobile Security. So let's go right in here. And I received an SMS message, amazing new game, downloading you in an iPhone. I love games, I love iPhones. Of course, I'm going to download this. And so let's click on this download here. So basically, I received an SMS, I want to play the game, so I click on it. So now I'm installing this game. Okay, so this game has been installed, and as you can see, this is just a regular game of tic-tac-toe. So the computer beat me. So now we see, all right, so a little vendor side. So Lacoon now is analyzing this device because there's been a change in the binary signature. We added a binary signature, or if one was deleted, or if one was updated, then Lacoon were event-driven, so we're analyzing this. Lo and behold, that game of tic-tac-toe was a piece of malware. So, okay, so that's what Lacoon would let the end user know if there's malware, but instead of going to removing this or doing the active layer protection, let's see what this malware can do on this device. So I'm going to do a few things here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my good secure container, and I'm going to open up an email. So this is just a normal email about an NSA phone hack. And then what I'm also going to do here is I'm going to send a text message to this device. Call this RKON. Okay, so what we've done here is we've opened up an email in our secure container, and we've sent a text message to this device. And we've done this, our email is in our secure container, and then all we have done so far is just download a game of tic-tac-toe. So when I go to my drop zone here, it should be working. A second. Okay. So imagine this Google inbox. Imagine this Google inbox is the attacker's drop zone, or the attacker's command and control server. So now we see here, So now we see here that we have. So we see here that we have. Okay. So what we see here is we see this good email. So now when we scroll through this, we see that this is that email that I opened up in my good secure container. So in the secure container, basically, that's encrypted in transit and in rest, but you have to read it in plain text on your device. So what that malware is able to do is not break your secure container, but circumvent your secure container. And now anytime you're going to open up an email in that secure container, the attacker is going to get a plain text version of that email. Okay, so that's the first thing that happened here. And let's see. And what we also have here, so we see that SMS leakage. So if you noticed here on the device, when we go back to the device, I haven't opened up the text message. I haven't done anything else to the device. But you can take my word for it, SMS leakage. Basically, I sent a text that said RKON, and now all our text messages are being exfiltrated off to the attacker. But one other thing happened here. We could just bear me 1 second here. In addition to okay, so it looks like I don't have the sound plate, but basically what happened is when I sent that text message to this device, what it also did is it remotely triggered the microphone. So that game of tic-tac-toe, all it did was you downloaded the game. So now we've circumvented our secure container. Anytime we open up email, the attacker is going to get a version of that email in plain text. Anytime a text message is sent, that text message is going to get sent. But what also happened is anytime, the attacker now knows that they own that device. The attacker now can look at that device and say, hey, there's a meeting at 2 p.m. I want to listen to that CFO talk to the board. And so now they send a text message to that CFO's device, and that CFO's device now, the microphone was triggered. Then after that meeting, they can, I set it here for 39 seconds, and I guess the sound's not working through the plug. But basically, we recorded 39 seconds of the conversation. So very simply, with an SMS phishing technique, we were able to basically own this device in just a matter of seconds. So, from an emulation standpoint, I'll be around. I can show you some interesting things on my iOS device also about basically having the end user put a profile configuration, similar to what LinkedIn did. And basically now you own that device. So when I have that profile configuration on that device, I can look at all the keystrokes, I can look at any URL that they're browsing. When I go to my Salesforce, now I'm going to have that URL, that login and that password to my Salesforce, or any other login and password that I'm going to be doing on that device, just with that profile configuration. So afterwards, I can show you that also. Just for the sake of time, any questions right now?
Sure. Which one antivirus vendor actually found the thing?
You know what? It was called Virus Total. So what Virus Total actually does is they take all the feeds 12 hours later, and they bundle up and they provide it like an OEM for free. They were the only one that found it. So it was not one of the top 55 individual ones that actually was able to find that one.